Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joed Lopez from Pinvisio.org with a quick video comparing two different platforms, two different ecosystems that can help you or your organization get things done. 2018 is obviously, we're in the new year, and a lot of people are probably feeling like, that they are re-energized, invigorated, and wanting to hit it hard and crush it. And when it comes to crushing it in social change, a lot of that means not only being on point with your strategy, it also means being on point with your execution and being productive. And that's where these platforms come in. So traditionally, what churches or nonprofits do, because they want to try to stay lean, is use a lot of personal services, consumer-facing services like Gmail or Dropbox, and then use them in a business case scenario. And so that way, most of the time, you're saving money and you're piggybacking on the generosity of the free platform. And that's okay, I guess, if you want to get started that way. But eventually, there comes a time where you have to start looking at platforms that are designed with organizations that are trying to get something done collectively as a whole, and that there's more at stake. So that's where other platforms come in, like Google for Work or Microsoft Office 365. Now, what's cool about those platforms is that they're established. Because they're so big, they're able to give these a lot of fringe benefits for free or baked in the services, and their pricing models tend to be, because the volume at which they're kind of producing these services and the people who are subscribing them for at an enterprise level, they become more competitive, and the price drops because they're so big that nonprofits and churches can get in the game either for free or at low cost. And that's what's great about both platforms. They offer free services for nonprofits and churches that are official 501c3 status. They have a 501c3 status. So here's the tricky part, and this came up from a conversation I had with a family member, and one family member who has way more tech experience than me, especially more so at the enterprise level than anywhere else, and I were discussing like what would be the best platform, and he was leaning towards Office 365, and I was leaning more towards Google and Google for Work, which is Google for Nonprofits, technically, still some branding. But basically, it was a conversation, a back and forth of which would serve the church better. And after a decent back and forth, it really got me thinking, even doing some research to kind of like test assumptions. And after doing some more research and digging on the matter, I still feel that Google for Work, which has, again, a free offering for nonprofits once you apply for the process, is the better solution for small to mid-size nonprofits and churches. And it's not on, and the reason for this is it's not based on technical merits, although a case could be made for that. It's more so for human behavioral merits, meaning it deals with more of the heart, dealing more of the person, why that would be a better solution. And to kind of give you some, a concrete example to kind of, make it obvious for everyone who's listening, it's simply by this. What's more practical for organization? Having something that has all the bells and whistles, or having something that meets the person where they are and is easier to get started with and use? That's the crux of the concept. How much friction and how much of a learning curve is there when it comes to getting a team to all agree on a platform or a way of doing things when it comes to digital work. Now, the context matters. There's always like a saying in Christian circles, and especially when it comes to like the Bible, is like context is king. And that, I think, bears mentioning here too. Context is a huge important factor, because if I was saying, hey, this was a Fortune 500 company, Fortune 1000 company, I would go with Microsoft Office 365 all day, every day. But when we're talking about a small to mid-sized church or nonprofit, and we're talking about high number of volunteers per paid staff ratio, when we're talking about meeting people where they are in their technology experience, and that being diverse and varied, all that changes the game in a matter that really changes the solution. And that's where it comes down to. So the case was made that, hey, Slack is cool, but Teams, Microsoft Teams, which is now a Slack competitor, is actually better. Hangouts is cool, but Skype has gotten a lot better. And it got me really thinking, why was that the case? Why would someone kind of back that statement? And it came from this idea that, hey, there's bells and whistles and all these new features, all these cool things you can do in one place. And that one place is great because you can train someone once and they kind of get the platform, they get the solution, and they hopefully would love it and use it. Here's where it begins to fall apart. There's a lot of things you can do with Microsoft Teams. And by the way, this example, this kind of thing goes through and through with a lot of the services when you compare it. Is that with Microsoft Teams, there's a thing called to-do list and assigning tasks and all those things. When it comes to actually using it, if you had to assign someone a task in Teams, you actually have to go into the service and use the service, log in, go to the task, create a task, and tag the person, kind of like you're tagging someone on Facebook. And then they'll be assigned a task that way. That's great. They make it really easy. What they don't have are, again, these nuances and these small things go a long way. Details matter. What they don't have is a Gmail add-on that allows you to, while you're in the middle of an email, open a third panel in that same window, and in Gmail, assign a task that literally imports the text from the email into the task. Now, let's be really, really honest here. Your email is often many things. It's just a FYI reference type thing, or it's also a to-do list item that has to be chiseled into a language that you choose to, represent what the email says and what the implication of the email is, to do X, Y, and Z. Now, going back to the context, if I'm someone who's like really new to this new way of working in a digital world, and I'm not really, if I wanted to do something, I either write it down my to-do list on paper, or I put it in my phone as a reminder. What kind of behavior patterns are going to be more likely to be adopted in this kind of scenario of a volunteer-based organization that has multiple hats and is really busy, have kids, family, like taking care of the animals, the dog? How likely are they to use something, to remember to put down something in an action step in the heat of the moment when they get the email? Are they going to do it through logging in a portal and getting to the right window and then doing it? Or is it easier for them to use the actual email itself as a trigger to attach to another thing? See, here's a thing that to get technical, it's a beautiful thing about these Web 2.0 solutions out there, like Asana, like Trello, or like any of these services, Dropbox, even Google, is this thing called APIs. And what APIs do is allow things, almost it's the thing that makes a service extendable, meaning I don't have to be in Asana to use Asana. I can use it in my Gmail. I can use it in a Chrome extension, and even if you go to that far, that to that extent, even with third-party extensions, of course that usually those are last resort, but you still have those options, and that's the key thing here is options and giving your volunteers options, because not every single volunteer is going to use the service in the same way. It just has to get to the service eventually. So whether I'm mobile centric with my use, or I am email centric with my to-do list and project management and getting things done, or I can just use my browser, Asana tab open, and get things done that way. No matter who or where I am, I can get things done. And and here's the reason why. Microsoft Teams are focused on a different type of worker. They're most likely focused on high-end corporate enterprise-based use cases. And they're here's the thing. They're enterprise first, consumer, with a consumer feel after the fact. Services like Asana, they kind of come from a consumer first mentality with an enterprise solution as a back end, and it's a reason why a lot of these services have like free up to X amount of users, is because they know that if we get the common user to agree with our workflow, agree with the things that we do this way, and we make it easy for that person, then we can, get other people hooked around them, and then get an actual pricing model that can create a business out of it and be sustainable. And that's what Asana has done. So you can use it up to, I think, 30 people for free, and then charge after that. And that's usually more than enough for most organizations. So I say all this to say, you gotta the solutions that I look for when I'm making recommendations, and which I will continue to make Google for Nonprofits, or Google Work for Nonprofits, a continual recommendation is, one, it was consumer first, and because of that, it's way more accessible to people who are not used to, like people who are not techie still have Gmail accounts. People who are not techie have Google Calendar accounts. Like it's baked into their freaking phones. So that off the bat gives you a home run. Two, and even they use Chromecast too, some of them. So you have that going for you when you're trying to do something fancy. They know how to cast things for meetings, and go from there. But anyways, it's closer to them, and the distance that they have to go from where they are to where the technology is, and the workflow, how that's supposed to be, the gap is so much shorter. So that's one. That's like a main point there. Two, it's highly configurable, and you have all kinds of apps and extensions and add-ons that can really allow the individual to kind of like find their own way of doing things and still be part of the team, still be part of the same platform, and still kind of do work that way. And then lastly, it's just So again, the first one is it's consumer ready first. You're already halfway there with them having the phone and Android and all that stuff. Two, it's consumer. It's extensible with add-ons and all those kind of things. Um, and then lastly, it's just less. It's easier to learn. It's easier to get things done. Um, the learning curve for training and all those things are already there. I mean, Google has a whole education suite where it's almost like a mini course system where people there's times where people get stuck on something and I email them some support and they're unstuck because Google has already did the support, the documentation, the training videos, all those things. Microsoft is not there yet with those things. And they're catching up, granted, but Microsoft Office 365 is not there yet. And so, which leads me to my final point. I rather use services that are specialized, like Slack. I'd rather use Slack and Asana, who are so focused on feature enhancements and extensions and integrations with other services. Like Slack integrates with Google Drive and Asana and all those things, and they do that so well. Than to have someone else do everything in one shot and then might miss one or two things here and there. So teams, they're bringing in stuff, but with like Slack integration, maybe I don't know if they actually have Slack integration, but I know Skype has some form of like integrations and stuff like that. But I want to get to the people who are passionate about their widget and they go crazy making it awesome, than to go someone who is spread thin on how do we integrate calendar, how do we integrate video, how do we bring it storage, file management, all these different things, and they have to kind of like bring it together. That's a harder thing to do than to do these specialization things there. And I'd rather have my clients and the people I support have the best of the best implementation of a feature than have the convenience of having a feature all in one spot. I would say probably 9 out of 10 times. Of course, there's a case that can be made where that's warranted, but for the most part, small to mid-sized churches will do better with getting a handful of services that are best in class than one or two services that do everything. And I know that might seem counterintuitive, but given the fact that the people who you're working with, they are bringing their own ideology and their own thing, and you want to standardize that to some degree. For the most part, you want to at least give them options on how, and not micromanage how they do things and how they track things and how they work on things. Like, you want to give them the flexibility to use it. So on my dashboard, on my extensions, on my web browser, Chrome, I have Asana in there. And sometimes I find myself at a page where I got to do something on, I can boom integrate that in my Asana account in just 2 clicks. That frictionless use case goes a long way when you're in the wild. On paper, Teams probably blows out a lot of things out the water, but when you're actually living it, walking it, using it in the real world, in real life, when you're taking care of kids, you have ministry, you have this, you have to take that into account. And I think that actually takes precedent over having the technical things on paper looking good. All right, that's my rant. Just leave it there. What are your thoughts? I think this is obviously ultimately it's a case by case thing, and I think no matter what anyone uses, it doesn't matter what they use. Ultimately, is that do they have the training? Do they have the committed heart to follow through with that? And are they all in agreement? Because that's really trumps everything else. But I just find that it's harder to get there with other services. You have to find the services that meet them where they are and build up from there. But it's possible. You can use pen and paper and be like, the most efficient and effective person, but everyone has to be bought into that, and that's kind of like a different story, though. It's highly unlikely, but if you just use it, that's the most important thing. So no matter what you use, I hope you're getting work done. And if you haven't subscribed to our email newsletter to learn about more of our podcasts and things that are coming up for social change interviews, head out to penvisio.org. I'll stop from there. Hope you guys have a good one. God bless. Have a good night. Peace.